Welcome everybody. My name is David Nathaniel, and I'm the president of the Jewish Iraqi community in Montreal. It's a pleasure to welcome you all on this very important day, or at least very important commemoration. And I'm so pleased. We have already 118 participants, so we have a great turnout. And we're very happy about that. So now, without further ado, I'd like to introduce Charles Shemy, our president at the Spanish and Portuguese in Montreal. Charles, you could just unmute yourself when you come on. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for coming. My name is Charles Shemy. I'm the president of the Spanish and Portuguese Synagogue in Montreal. And first of all, I would like to thank David for organizing this event, and Lizette and Morris Abdelazer and Sammy and Gladys for helping and organizing it. And it's a very, very important event and something that should always be remembered by all Jews, especially the Iraqi Jews. And I would also like to thank all the speakers that are going to be speaking. Really excited to hear from Lizette and Norma and David and Yvette. Norma is also my cousin, so it's even double exciting. From a personal note, I was born in Iraq, and I came here very young at the age of 5 in 1965. So I only have really good memories of Iraq. I remember my house. I remember Norma's garden. We were there, must have been there quite a bit. I remember my school, the Franchini School, the grandeur of the school, the grandeur of the foyer. I remember the outdoor movie theater. So I only have good memories. And of course, I would always, over the years, always ask my parents to tell me more. I was starving for information about Iraq and how we lived. And they were always very hesitant to tell me, to talk about it. And, they did not really want to relive these memories. So this is very exciting for me, and I'm starving for information. And so with no further ado, I'd like to introduce our beloved Rabbi Pinto and our beloved Cantor Ben Lolo to say a few words and to have some prayers and blessings. And thank you for all the participants from all over. I think we have people from New York and from London, and I think from Israel. So it's very exciting. Thank you, Rabbi Pinto and Cantor Ben Lolo.
Thank you, Charles. Thank you, David, for making this work. Thank you, everybody, for putting the effort to commemorate this special and important event. Friends, today, in memory of our dear brothers that were executed in Iraq, I would like to share with you 2 tragic anecdotes of our people that can maybe shed some light on today's commemoration. The Babylonian Talmud relates the most moving narratives to emerge from our history of martyrdom account of 10 martyrs. The heart-rending narrative describing in graphic details the death of 10 Mishnaic era Torah luminaries who were slaughtered on the altar of senseless hatred. The first account the Talmud relates is about Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel Nasi and Rabbi Ishmael Kohen Gadol. When they were marching out to their execution, each sage begged to be killed first, as not to witness the execution of his distinguished colleague. Their executioners sadistically cast lots, and Rabbi Shimon was murdered first. As Rabbi Ishmael was bemoaning the loss of his close friend, the executioner's daughter implored her father to keep him alive. When he refused, his daughter asked instead that Rabbi Ishmael's facial skin be removed so that she could always gaze at its beauty. This unspeakable barbaric request was fulfilled, and Rabbi Ishmael's face was skinned while he was still alive. As a further insult, the skin was kept in storage to be worn by legion as for good luck during battle. The second account is about another Talmudic sage by the name of Rabbi Hanania ben Tardion. Rabbi Hanania was caught teaching Torah in public, which was a sin punishable by death during his time. The Romans decided to make an example of him. Accordingly, Rabbi Hanania was wrapped in a Torah scroll, which was then set at fire. As if this torture were not sufficient, strips of water-soaked wool were placed on his body to prolong his agony. While his distraught students looking on helplessly, Rabbi Hanania inspired them with his famous utterance, "The parchment is burning, but the letters are flying off," meaning that enemies can crush the Jewish body, but not the Jewish spirit. Friends, why does the Talmud find it so important to tell us of such gruesome stories? The answer is quite obvious. The Talmud relates in graphic details these stories lest we forget those that were prosecuted for the simple reason that they were Jewish, and to remember that although through generations of prosecution and trepidation, the Jewish spirit not only survived but thrived, pessimism was never a Jewish trait. We as individuals and as a nation choose hope in the face of prosecution. Today too, we are remembering 10 martyrs, and the same is to be said about them, murdered for the simple reason of their Jewish identity, taking from us at the prime of their lives. And so, just like the Talmud, we must retell their story, write books about them, tell their story to our children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren, inshallah. Here too, we have the equal duty and responsibility to commemorate, as we're doing today, this tragic episode of our history, and to pass it on to future generation, lest we forget. And I say to them, you are not forgotten, our dear brothers. Ezra Naji Zilcha, Charles Raphael Choresh, Fuad Gabay, Yechezkel Gurji Namerdi, Sabach Chaim Dayan, Daoud Gali, Naim Cheduri Chelali, Cheskel Saleh Cheskel, Daoud Cheskel Baruch Delal, and Jamal Hakim. May it be the will of Hashem that your memory be a blessing to all of us, and may your soul be bound in the eternal bound of life, and let us say Amen.
Amen.
If I could ask everyone to kindly rise and to join us in prayer as our Chazan Daniel Ben Lolo recites the memory prayer.
Thank you, Rabbi, and thank you to everyone assembled here for this important occasion. It says in the Tachanun, they who built up the fence are no more, they are perished. Who could avert anger? There are none left to stand in the breach. We read Anshe Emuna Avadu, that we ask God to remember them. Anshe Emuna Avadu Ba'im Bechoach Ma'asem Giborim Lamod Ba'peretz Tochim Et HaGezerot Hayu Lanu Lechoma Ulemachase Beyom Zam Zoachim Af Belach Hasham חמה עצרו בשבעם, שוטטנו בארבע פינות, תרופה לא מצינו, שבנו אליך בבושת פנינו, לשחרך אל בעת צרותינו, אבל רחמים שוכן מרומים ברחמיו, ועצומים הוא יפקוד ברחמים, ברחמים החסידים והישרים והתמימים, קהילות הקודש שמסרו נפשם על קדושת השם, הנאהבים והנעימים בחייהם ובמותם לא נפרדו, מנשרים קלו ומאריות גברו, לעשות רצון קונם וחפץ צורם. יזכרם אלוהינו לטובה, עם שאר צדיקי עולם, וינקום לעינינו נקמת דם עבדיו השפוך, ככתוב בתורת משה איש האלוהים, הרנינו גויים עמו כי דם עבדיו יקום, ונקם ישיב לצרה וכיפר אדמתו עולמו, ועל ידי עבדיך הנביאים כתוב לאמור, וניקתי דמם לא ניקתי ואדוני שוכן בציון. ובכתבי הקודש נאמר למו יאמרו הגויים איה אלוהים יוודע, בגויים לעינינו נגמת דם עבדיך השפוך, ואומר כי דורש דמים אותם זכר, לא שכח צעקת ענבים, ואומר ידין בגויים מלא גוויות, מחץ ראש על ארץ רבם, מנחל בדרך ישתה, על כן ירים ראש. אל מלא רחמים שוכן במרומים, המצא מנוחה נכונה תחת כנפי השכינה, במעלות קדושים קדושים טהורים וגיבורים, שהוא מתועל קידוש השם, ויצרו שהלכו לעולמם בגן עדן תהא מנוחתם, לכן בעל הרחמים יסתירם בסתר כנפיך לעולמים, ויצרור בצרור החיים את נשמותיהם, אדוני הוא נחלתם, ותנוח בשלום על משכבם, ונאמר אמן.
Amen.
Amen.
Thank you very much, Rabbi Pinto. Your address was really inspirational and very meaningful. And Cantor Ben Lolo, I wasn't born in Iraq, so I was born in Canada, so I never had any experience of being there. But in a way, I was closing my eyes and listening to you and imagining what the scene would be like in Baghdad, good times and bad times. And I'm sure to many others who were born in Baghdad, who lived in Baghdad, it's even more meaningful. So thank you very, very much. I'd like to introduce our next speaker and our guest. So his name is Shimon Samuels, and he is with the Simon Wiesenthal Center. He was born and schooled in England with degrees in international relations from the Hebrew University of Jerusalem, the London School of Economics, the Keio University in Tokyo, and the University of Pennsylvania. He is the Director for International Relations at the Simon Wiesenthal Center, based in Paris, responsible for issues of contemporary racism and anti-Semitism in Europe, Latin America, and international organizations. He is the chair of the Journal for the Study of Anti-Semitism and a laureate of its Jabotinsky Award. He's the lead editor of Anti-Semitism, The Generic Hatred, Essays in Memory of Simon Wiesenthal, co-sponsored by UNESCO, published in English by Valentine Mitchell, London, in French, Spanish, Russian, and Arabic language editions. He's involved in containing resurgent anti-Semitism in Europe and Latin America, restitution claims against banks and insurance companies, Vatican diplomacy, and countering NGO incitement in international fora. His cardinal philosophy is best summarized in his chapter on applying the lessons of the Holocaust in the book, Is the Holocaust Unique?, edited by Alan Rosenbaum. Chevalier of the Legion of Honor, awarded by President Jacques Chirac, member of the Anglo-American Press Association of Paris, presented the 2016 award of the French National Bureau for Vigilance Against Anti-Semitism, elected a member of the European Jewish Parliament, and a recipient of its 2020 Achievement Award. So we are very honored, Shimon, to have you, and I welcome you to address the audience. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, David, and thank you for the introduction. I'll start again. In the spirit of the Abraham Accords, we are seeing a growing interest in the Holocaust and its impact, particularly on the Jews of Mena. And I'd just like to point out that this is also the 79th anniversary of the Wannsee Protocol. I'm sure you all have heard of the Wannsee Protocol. It lists 33 jurisdictions or countries, from 1,300 Jews in Ireland to 5 million in the Soviet Union. It has 11 million Jews on this list for murder. I was born in the United Kingdom. The 300,000 British Jews were on this list. And but we were saved by 30 miles of channel water. And I would like to call that the if factor in history, which also touches all of you. Had Rommel won the Desert Campaign, the call by Haj Amin al-Husseini to Hitler to exterminate the Jews of the Arab world would have been history. So despite the few lights in the darkness, such as Mohammed V of Morocco, Monsif Bey of Tunisia, who saved most of their Jews from Vichy France. But in brief, the French North Africa, Syria, Lebanon, and the British mandates in Palestine and Iraq, and even until the British Soviet invasion of Persia, the Jews of Persia or Iran, all were in danger. In June of this year, we mark also the 80th anniversary of the Farhud of Rashid Ali, and I'm sure that none of you need any education on that. This is a situation which Rashid Ali, in the disappearance of the British, he created a pogrom, which I understand the Farhud means violent disposition. And when the British forces returned, he, as a Nazi sympathizer, fled to Berlin, where Hitler appointed him head of the Iraqi government in exile. Following Israel's miraculous return to history and geography in 1948, many of you and most of Iraq Jewry followed the biblical prophecy. By the river of Babylon, we laid down and wept as we remembered Zion. Those that stayed became the target of the Ba'athist coup d'etat, and they were accused of treason. Perhaps one could call it a Farhud number 2. And that is what you are remembering today. And it's rather strange, but it's very important that this happened on the 27th of January, as it fits in there under the part and parcel of the Shoah commemoration. I read that the Baghdad Radio broadcast at that time said, "We hung spies, the Jews sacrificed Christ." So this was obviously an anti-Semitic, highly anti-Semitic move. When we heard the news, I was on the staff of the Foreign Policy Research Institute of the University of Pennsylvania. And the president of that organization asked me for a report for the then Secretary of State, William Rogers. His release to the press was very powerful. He said, "Iraq's actions are repugnant to the conscience of the world." This is a fitting position to take for the incoming Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, on the 27th of January, for he is the stepson of the international lawyer and Holocaust survivor, Sam Pisau. To conclude with 2 books. One is, as David mentioned, our volume, Anti-Semitism, the Generic Hatred, which won the New York Jewish Book Prize. It was followed in a French edition, Spanish, and Russian. And last year, it was republished with essays that would interest an Arab reader. And the Arabic version, I don't know if you can see it as I'm holding it up here. This is available to any one of you who would like to write to me. We can send you this as you speak Arabic, and we would like to see that it's being used. It was edited by Esti Webman. Some of you may know her name from Tel Aviv University, who unfortunately passed away just a few weeks ago. So that is one of the 2 books. The other book was discovered on the 75th anniversary of the Wannsee Protocol. And we held a session in the British Parliament on that document. At that time, an academic wrote an article in the Herald Tribune, which became the New York Times of Europe. It showed a book with a black cover. There are only 2 editions. One is in the library of Munich, the city of Munich, and the other one was going up for auction. This black cover had initials, gold initials, A.H., Adolf Hitler. It was a demography, not just of large communities, but also small towns of the Jews of North America. There is still a question for its bona fides, but for the if factor, that is shattering. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Shimon. And also, I'd like to mention that Shimon will be publishing an article in the Jerusalem Post on the 27th of January on this very subject. So if you just want to make a note of that and maybe go online, you'll be able to see his article. So thank you again. So now I'm going to put on a short video, and here we go.
Jews were deeply hated by so many people in Iraq. Deeply hated. It was just over 2 years after the Six-Day War. In the Six-Day War, Iraq, like Egypt, like Syria, like Jordan, was beaten very badly by Israel. So the hate for the Jews was absolutely palpable everywhere.
Now Saddam puts into practice the anti-Semitism his uncle could only write about. He has 14 men and boys arrested, put on trial for spying for Israel.
It was hardly a trial. It was a short trial. The whole thing was one big joke. There were no proofs. There was nothing.
Among the accused is Samira Ilyas's 17-year-old brother, Heskel.
He was an ambitious, charming boy. He was in love with life.
In early 1969, the falsely accused are hanged.
It was shown on TV, but we couldn't watch. It was too horrible to watch. I just kept crying. What else could we do? It was a black day. It was a horrible day. Beyond description. Life was over.
By the time Saddam is overthrown, some 3 decades later, there will only be 34 Jews left in Iraq. But what the cheering crowds failed to realize that day was that Saddam is sending a message to all Iraqis.
I will now like to introduce Lizette Addis, who will start to talk about her experience being there at the time, and then she'll introduce the other speakers that we're blessed to have for this commemoration. So Lizette, it's all yours.
Thank you very much. First of all, I'd like to really thank you, Shimon, for joining us and for making it so much more powerful. Everything you mentioned and everything you're working about still, and we owe you a lot. And I would like to help in any way we can. I think it's something we have to never let our guard down when it comes to anti-Semitism. And I think this is why we are doing all this. It's not a happy thing to commemorate, but we have to remember that we have to always be vigilant about the anti-Semitism, which is what it's all about. So this 2-minute movie showed us more or less what was happening in Iraq. And as you mentioned, Shimon, what happened to us once the 7-day war was declared that Israel won that war, they started to persecute us exactly the same way that the Nazis did. They kicked us out of all the clubs. They confiscated our own playground. They they revoked all the Jewish commercial licenses, they ordered all business companies to kick out, to fire all their Jewish employees, and they froze all the Jewish assets without warning, including the money, our money that was in the bank. We could only take out something like, I don't know, $250 a month to live on from our own account. And that was the terrible thing about it all. So people were taken unawares when all this happened. Children at school started to faint from hunger because the parents had no more income. And luckily, two ladies at school tried to help with discreet food baskets for them and their families. The whole thing was an unraveling nightmare without phones. We had each other coming to each other's home to tell each other that, hey, so-and-so is taken to prison, so-and-so has just been arrested, so-and-so has been, it was an unending nightmare. And it kept getting worse. It got to a stage where anytime a car passed by at night, because they only raided the homes at night, the Amen of, the Baath Amen, I would wake up, literally tremble and kneel and pray that they just do not stop and ring the bell. It got so bad that I was too scared to go to the pharmacy, but I sent my mom to go buy sleeping pills for herself and myself in case they came to arrest us, to commit suicide. The students who graduated in '67, who are with us today, like Ilan Dalal, like Gladys Daoud, like Odette Masliah, all of these people who are with us today were not able to go to university because they graduated in '67. These were the students at the university who were starting to become harassed, the Jewish students, all of them. Fuad Safi was told, for instance, that they will kill him and throw him in a ditch, and he's just a Jew. It's like killing a dog. The stray dog in Iraq meant nothing also. All of these guys were arrested. Salman Masri, was arrested for supposedly drawing a Star of David in the blackboard, which wasn't true, but they put him in jail for like 4 years for that. He was threatened, Albert Moshe was threatened that if he came back to school, to university, they will kill him. Now, Hilda Shamoun was denounced by her own classmate. His name was Anas, that she also drew a Star of David, which also wasn't true. We never dared do that at home, let alone do this at school on the blackboard. She was taken to prison, in a women's prison, with common thieves, with murderers, with prostitutes. Thank God, eventually she was able to get out. Prithvi was also threatened by gunpoint by one of those 3 thugs. Do you have the picture of the thugs, David? The 3 thugs that were, there were only 3 thugs who belonged to the Baath party at university, but they had their guns and they were playing with it and threatening all the Iraqi Jews at the university. Say Albert Sliman and Ellis Dalal, the late Ellis Dalal, were yanked out of the taxi while they were going back home and told and beaten up on their stomachs, beaten up. These were the 3 thugs. This smiley guy held the gun at a few people. He looked so innocent. This is Anas, who was the classmate of Hilda, who blamed her for drawing the star. And this guy was one of the worst. Look at his expression. He threatened all of us. He was very scary. And we were living, every day we went to university, we had to pass by an army base. And each time we went there, they looked at our cards, our names, and it was scary going to university and back. So we were lucky to be attending university, but we were also scared. As you know, all these people who were arrested, it was mainly from Basra, because, you can leave this for now. I'll show it in a minute. The people who were arrested from Basra were, obviously, they were all tortured, and some of them were tortured to death in order for the others to admit that they were spies and they promised them a lenient sentence if they admitted that they were spies. So some of them gave in to that torture. Some were actually being threatened with their wives, like one of the people hanged, Fuad Gabay, his wife was pregnant. They actually threatened him that if he does not admit to spying, that they would open his wife's stomach and present the baby to him on a silver platter. His daughter later wrote this in her book, Rita Katz. She wrote it in a book called Terrorist Hunter. And she still works in America, in the States. Anyway, all these tortures, was the Mickey Mouse trial, as you heard, and they really had absolutely no proof about anything. They blamed some of the. Can you show the pictures of the boys, please, of the people, the victims? Samira, for instance, she had her two brothers, and her father taken in prison and taken to court. I mean, taken in court. This one is Heskel, Salah Heskel, who's the brother of Samira, whom they hanged, but he had a younger brother as well, and they blamed the two of them as having blown up a bridge, which was still standing. The bridge was intact, but they blamed them for having blown up a bridge, hanged Heskel, and gave his other younger brother, who was obviously younger than 18, they gave him a prison sentence, and the father, who was also in prison with them. Samira's story is one of the hardest to swallow, because eventually her sister also was kidnapped by 2 or 3 years later. Her sister and younger sister, who was just married, was kidnapped. Suad, she was kidnapped by the government also, and they still don't know if she's alive or not. Azra Naji Sion was considered like the head of the spy ring. They hanged him, and they had his older brother with him, Heskel. And Heskel was acquitted, but he was never able to talk about anything that happened to his family once he met them. His daughters are very dear friends of mine who live in Chicago, Ruth and Carmela, and his sons, talking about Ezra, Naji, Sion Zilcha's nephew and nieces. Naim Khtouri Hilali was less than 18 years old. They lied and they said he was older. Dahoud Ghali, when they picked him up, and when they picked all the young ones, the parents begged them to, to take, the mothers begged to take the mothers instead of the boys. But of course they said, no, we promise you, we're just going to ask them a few questions and return them within an hour or two. The mothers did not see their boys till 2 months later, after they were hanged. And Dahoud Ghali's mother went to the square herself to see her son. And the people started to beat her up because she is the mother of the spy. This is how barbaric this whole thing was. People were running around with their glitter, running to the square, which was like a 5-minute walk away from my house. We had to go to university because we had our midterm exams. And now you can show the rally that we were. I mistakenly thought that these were educated people, that they would know that this whole trial was a sham, but and they would probably sympathize with us. Well, we were met with this rally. Can you show the other one with the met with this rally with the speeches, welcoming what the government did and wanting more, and demanding the government for more see, look, this is Harakat Tahrir al-Watani al-Falastini. This is to free Palestine, the Rock. This is supposedly a Palestinian. These, look at the people here, how they're giving speeches. And this was the day of the hanging. Look how excited they were. This was a teacher. These were students. Can you imagine how we felt when these people were our classmates that fraternized with us, they copied from us, they supposedly were our friends, and here they are welcoming what the government did, looking at us and saying, we want more, and laughing. They were actually laughing. The horrors of that day would be forever emblazoned in the DNA of every Jew who was in Iraq and who lived through this nightmare, trauma. I will neither forget nor forgive. And that will always make us cautious of all these nice words we hear from people who say we are friends, we are cousins. We have to always be vigilant and teach the children to be vigilant. Anyway, when I got home, I was supposed to act very brave. We all did. We couldn't cry. We couldn't show any emotions. But when I got home, I remember sobbing uncontrollably in the pillow on my mouth so that they can't hear me, while I could hear the people still celebrating in the streets. The maid came and told my mom, tell her to stop crying. They'll come and say she's one of them. I mean, when you remember those days, it brings back all the agony that came with it. So you can just imagine the heightened atmosphere of terror that dominated our daily existence after that horrid day. They didn't give in to the pressure right away, in spite of the international pressure on Iraq to stop these fake accusations and this barbaric spectacle. The reign of terror and hangings continued on a quieter scale, less of a public charade, but we knew who was being killed. There were at least 50 more Jews who were killed, many tortured to death, like Nassim Yair, Amy's father, Dahoud Zbeda. Others were hanged in August, continuing like 6 months later, Albert Nunu, Ishaq Dalal, Nassim Rajwan, and many, many, many more who were also missing. Since the Ba'ath Party arrived in Iraq in 1963, the Jews became like a canary in a coal mine, slowly being stripped of our rights, eventually our dignity, our livelihood, and some of us paid the ultimate price, which was their lives. And this was following exactly the Nazi persecution, as in the movie they say Saddam's uncle was very pro-Nazi, and that's how Saddam grew up, and he followed exactly what the Nazis did. So my message is just to be aware of the creeping anti-Semitism, the erosion of freedom of speech, the curtailing of individual rights, which is happening now, unfortunately, in the whole world, and that new cancel culture. We cannot afford to make allowances. We are eternally grateful to the free and democratic countries of Canada, of America, of Europe, of England, that welcomed us as immigrants and treated us as equals. We in turn are proud to be citizens of these glorious new countries which we served and belong to and continue to serve, and pray for its prosperity, and safety. We will serve it to the best of our abilities. We also pray for a strong and thriving Israel to eliminate the way, and it is the pillar on which we all lean. Thank you for listening. And now I'll be followed by Norma Hayek, who will say her story. She was younger, and she was still going to school when this happened. From her point of view, David Gabay, who was in university with us and was also accosted by those thugs I talked about, the 3 thugs. And finally, Yvette Dabbi Atraqchi, who will talk about her cousin, who was one of the martyrs killed by torture, and she'll tell her story. So I thank you all. Thank you for listening, and we'll start with Norma.
Yes. Hello, everyone. Can you see me?
Yes.
Okay. Good day. So my name is Norma Hayop, and I'll be sharing some memories with you on behalf of myself and my sister, Odette. We were both born in Baghdad, and we escaped in November of 1970 to Iran via Suleimania. In 1969, I was 15 years old, and I was a student at Frank Aney School. Odette was 19 years old, and as Lizette mentioned, the Jews after the 67 war were denied admission to university, so Odette was hired to teach French at Frank Aney School. We remember vividly the show trials of the Jewish men falsely accused of being spies for Israel. We watched in horror and disbelief as truths were fabricated against innocent men whose only crime was being Jewish. For those of us who witnessed these events, certain images are never forgotten. For me and Odette, it's the image of Azra Naji Zelha crying, pleading, begging the judge to believe him, that he's innocent, that he is not a spy for Israel, that he is an ordinary Iraqi citizen minding his own business. It was obvious to us that all this was falling on deaf ears. Watching these trials was traumatizing. The desperation gripped the whole community. We were praying for a miracle, for the world to not allow this injustice to continue. We were hoping that someone somewhere will intervene and get clemency for these innocent men. Unfortunately, our prayers were not answered. On January 27, 1969, it was a Monday. The sun was shining, skies were clear, the winter air crisp, and we woke up to the shocking news of the hangings and to the barbaric images of a hysterical mob dancing and singing around the dead bodies on display in Tahrir Square. It was all too much for me and Odette to watch, so we escaped to the roof of our house, trying to make sense of what was happening. Our street was deserted. It took all our strength to glance at our neighbor's house, the Borshans, whose son-in-law, Charles Horesh, was one of the victims. My late mother had had many conversations with Mrs. Borshan, Dahoud, we called her, to inquire about her daughter Samah and her son-in-law, Charles Horesh, who was detained 2.5 months earlier, not to be heard from or seen since. His wife, Samah, had knocked on the doors of many prisons trying to find her husband. And everywhere she went, she was told he was not there. The family finally hired a lawyer who assured them and told them not to worry, that a deal will certainly be reached and that their son-in-law will be freed. Imagine the shock of that family on that morning. The following hours and the roller coaster of emotions that followed are forever etched in our memory. We were angry that our country, Iraq, and the world allowed this to happen. We were afraid of what's coming next. Is the mob going to march towards Jewish neighborhoods and attack? Are there going to be more arrests of innocent Jews and more death convictions? No one knew. We were beyond sad for the senseless loss of lives of innocent people and the suffering that they must have endured, not to mention their immediate families and how they would cope with this unspeakable tragedy. Some of you may be familiar with a farewell letter that Naim Hilali wrote to his family from his prison cell, bidding them farewell. The family read the letter once and kept it secret for 50 years before it became public because the pain was just too much to bear. We felt guilty that our families were spared, but not theirs. And last but not least, we felt helpless. Normally, when you're in danger, you spring into action, but there was no action to spring in under the circumstances, no one to trust and no one to count on. Add to this the fact that telephone lines in Jewish homes were disconnected shortly after the 1967 war. So we had no way of reaching out to our families and friends and to support each other, something that was much needed on that day. Visiting was also risky because of the hysteria on the streets. Needless to say, we did not go to school that day. I'm not even sure that school was open. Another memory I have to share is the visit of foreign journalists to the school, Frank Aney School, shortly after the hangings. I don't remember the exact date, but I do remember very clearly the instructions that we got from the school administration and from our parents. We were told not to interact with the journalists and that if approached, that we should not say anything negative because everyone was gripped by fear. And God forbid, if they say so-and-so said something negative about the government, what would happen to our families next? On the day of the visit, there was much anticipation. Myself and a couple of friends decided that we will not forego this opportunity to pass a message to the outside world. So we scribbled messages on tiny bits of paper, describing our situation and asking for help. And we managed to slip these papers into the pockets of the journalists who were visiting. But I have no idea what happened to these bits of paper after. And in closing, I want to say that these painful memories linger, that this was not a day of glory, but rather a day of shame in the history of Iraq. And we pray for the souls of those who paid the ultimate price. And we're very grateful and thankful for having had the chance to leave and to come to a free world and be good citizens. Thank you.
Wow, Norma, that was amazing because your point of view from somebody going to school and a younger person is amazing. And I'm very happy you covered what I missed out, especially the fact that our telephones were cut. So somebody reminded me, I forgot to say it, but thank you. Okay, David, are you ready?
I think so.
Okay, great. Yours.
Hi, everyone. My name is David Gabay. And that year, I was 20 years old. And I was a civil engineer student at the Hikmah University. That morning, I was not aware that's what's going on. So we went to the university, we shared a taxi with a few of our friends. And when we got through the compound, we saw that there was a big excitement, everybody's around, and they told us, you know what, you should go home and you should go celebrate what's going on. The Jews were hanging there in the public square. Of course, we were shocked, and we told the taxi driver to turn back and take us home. On the way home, it took us about half an hour to get home, I guess. Not a word Not one of us was able to say a word even. So when I got home, our TV was on and the pictures of bodies hanging and in the main square, and thousand upon thousand of people, Iraqis, celebrating and dancing around them. I couldn't watch more than a few seconds. I went straight to my room, sobbing and trying to come to terms with what had happened. I knew two of the people they hanged personally, and I was certain they were all innocent, and this was all fabricated. That morning, I vowed that I will divorce myself of this country, Iraq, this people, and even my heritage. I wanted nothing to know about them anymore. And one thing I wanted to do is get out and never look back. 52 years later, the sad memories of that day are still fresh in my mind. The young Jews who were hanged that day were students from Basra University, and they were accused of spying for Israel. This government plot was very similar to another plot some Muslim students were fabricating in our university, Al-Hikmah, in Baghdad. I entered the university in the fall of 1966 to study civil engineering, and at the time, there were 3 classes for freshmen or freshwomen, if you want to be correct. I was in a different class from my cousin, Samir Paniri, Zakhranullah Ibrahim. He passed away a couple of years ago. He befriended some Muslim students, and one of them was Ibrahim Khalil, one that was in the picture, the terrible picture that Lizette showed us. And I got to know him through my cousin, spoke a few times, hang around a few times. And then in June 67, of course, the 6 Days War broke out. But our school year was already over, and we were in the summer break. After the war, the Iraqi government cut the telephone lines of all Jews, closed our sporting club, the Malab, where we used to hang out with our friends almost on a daily basis, and participate in all kinds of sports. We also used to hang out at the YMCA, where we used to swim or play billiards. See, Lizette is smiling. But the managers of that club told us that we cannot go there anymore because we are Jews. So we end up having nothing to do. We're nowhere else to go. So we started to go to a big coffee shop on the Tigris River. They called it El Firdos, Qahwat El Firdos. Whoever was there used to know it. We used to meet our friends and hang out, play dominoes and backgammon. A few days before the academic year started, it was in the evening, and we're sitting there with a few friends and my cousin Samir. All of a sudden, Ibrahim Khalil, one of the 3 idiots, showed up at our table with another Muslim student whom we knew, and asked Samir and myself in a nice way if we can go outside the coffee shop to talk. We didn't think that there was anything wrong because we knew them. They were students, and we saw them last time was their last school year. So we went out to the street, and then they told us to follow them to a side street where 2 other students were waiting. One of them was Anas al-Sheikh Ali, which again, we just spoke to him. He was the first one in that picture, the one with the smiley face. And he was in a higher class, and some of you from university or listening may have known him also.
Of course.
Pardon?
Yeah.
Ibrahim started to talking, and he said that he's aware, and they are aware of aspiring working for Israel in our university. And that Samir, my cousin, and myself were the ring leaders, and we better come out clean and tell them all about it. Before we even started to answer, Anas pulled out a revolver, and he said that we better confess or he will shoot us. We started telling them that they're out of their minds, and there was nothing even close to this was happening. Anas hit me in the face with the butt of the revolver and cut my face, and I started to bleed. We kept telling them, we have nothing to do with the spying, you're all wrong, we're just students. After about 20 minutes of arguing, they told us that we better not show up at the university when the classes resume, otherwise they will kill us. At the time, my father, Zakhranullah Ibrahim, was suffering from a bad case of colon cancer, and my mom was very busy taking care of him. So I did not mention anything to them. Samir and I decided to go back to classes anyway, and to show them that we are not really intimidated by them. That started the whole chapter with Ibrahim and his gang. intimidating, and beating some of other Jewish students. Going to the university became a really scary affair. We complained to the Jesuit fathers who were running the university about the situation, and they could not do much to stop the intimidation and the insults. Eventually, they decided to fire Ibrahim and two of his thugs. Life got better at the university, but the terror continued on Baghdad streets. It happened a few times that Ibrahim and his gang spotted me in my car, and they started chasing me at high speed, but every time I managed to outrun them. In the summer of 1968, I was playing poker with a group of friends at the Son and David Frank house. There was a lady about my mother's age who was playing with us, whom I never met before, or even I met after. She asked me who I was, and when I told her my name, she was shocked and turned pale. She asked me if she could talk to me in private. I said, sure. So we went to an adjoining room. She asked me again about my name and about my father's name. When I answered her, she had a very serious look on her face. She told me that her husband was arrested and was detained by the secret police for a month. And then he was released. When he came home, he kept asking her if she knew a young person by the name of David Gabay, because the secret police had a huge file on him and even the car he drives. And they kept asking if anything he knows about the spy ring that he was involved in. So she told me she really felt bad, and that if I had any chance of escaping Iraq, I should take it and get the hell out of there. Well, there was no other way out. So needless to say, she scared the hell out of me. So, but anyway, I returned and finished the poker game anyway. I was sure at that moment that So I was sure at that time, any moment, secret police would come to pick me up. Thank God nothing happened for about a month or two later, a friend of mine who used to play a lot of basketball with him, Charlie Meir, was arrested for about a week and then released. When he got out, he sent me and my cousin Samir a message with his older brother, telling us that our names were all over with the secret police regarding a spy ring, and only God can save us. Thank God nothing happened again. But a few months later, the government carried out the hangings, which has really changed everybody's life in a way. But I tend to believe that the government was preparing a second show where Samir and myself were the main actors in a spy ring at Al Hikmah University. But the outcry that came from all over the world and some probably divine intervention prevented a second massacre. May their memory stays blessed and in all our minds forever. Thank you, everyone.
David, don't take all the credit for yourself, David. Ibrahim al-Khalil, he threatened me a million times. And by luck, the day where he harassed and beat all the group, my group, El Estelal, Albert, that day, I just felt very nervous. I took a bus and just gone back home. And the next day I heard about it. So you're not only, if there would be a second hanging, you wouldn't be the only one. We would have been all together.
I didn't say who it was gonna be, but I know, like, I was one of the first one that was targeted, let's put it this way. Anyway, I'm not getting any credit. I don't need that credit, Amy. You can keep it.
No, I don't need any credit, but because my name is Ibrahim, and this gangster, Ibrahim al-Khalil. And all the time when they call somebody, all the time it's me or him, so he had something against me all the time.
All right.
Everybody he had something against all the Jews at university. He was resenting us all, and we were all a target, of course. David just was accosted by him even more with a gun and all that. And yes, he might have put you with the spy ring with David. Thank God it didn't happen. We don't know. Thank God it's behind us. Thank God we are out of this hellhole. And I also wanted to mention, I forgot, Samira Alias, whose two brothers were in prison, and her dad, and they hanged her brother Haskell, as I told you. And then 3 years later, they kidnapped her sister, is with us on Zoom now from London. At the time, I asked her to talk, but she couldn't talk about it. So I tried to summarize what the tragedy that befell her family. And she's with us now on Zoom if anybody wants to ask her anything after Yvette talks, of course. Thank you, Yvette.
But she did talk.
Does anyone know what happened to Ibrahim Khalil?
We don't know what happened to Ibrahim. Do you know, David?
I heard what happened to him. Like I heard that he died in prison a few years later. I don't know if it's true or not. But Walid Khashmullah, who was the third one in your picture, I read in the Gazette after the Americans were invaded Iraq that he was assassinated near Mosul, and because he's from Mosul, like originally, like his family. So he was Walid Khashmullah, the third guy in that picture, was assassinated right after when the Americans invaded Iraq. Ibrahim, I'm not sure. I mean, somebody told me, but I heard he was killed in prison. He died.
What about Anas? Do you know anything about Anas?
No, Anas never heard from him, I guess.
David, which one did you meet in a bar in England, London?
Oh, that's a funny story. I should have looked up his name. He was the son of. How do you know that story? How do you know that story, Alan?
You told me about it, and my blood boiled the minute you told me. My blood boiled, and I said, "I wish I'm there. I was gonna rip him up."
One of the gang, people that wasn't that picture. He was the son of the ex Air Force commander of the Iraqi army, and he used to be with them when they when they used to follow me in the car, try to beat me up, and then about. In January 71, I was in London. February 71, I was actually in 71 anyway. I was in London, and I went to the discotheque. And as I was walking around, I saw him about 50 feet away from me. The minute he saw me, he turned around and he ran away. So he ran the other way. I turned around, I went the other way, and I got him face to face. So I tell him, "You bastard, what you doing here?" And he said, "David," I said, "You pretending you didn't see me? Are you scared of me or what?" He said, "David, you're my friend. How could I believe me, I'm so drunk. I didn't see with my eyes. Really, pardon me, I didn't see you. I'm really sorry." I said, "Get the hell out of here. You have no business. I don't want to see her anymore." So he took his stuff and left, but I couldn't do anything physically because in London, I don't want to get thrown out. But that's to show you what kind of cowards they were.
Thank you. I'll let
you know, Ibrahim Khalil, as far as I know, also he was killed in prison. I had that story too from another source.
Maybe, hopefully.
I hope that Sabah Basri will be with us, because the reason, this is Dave Khadar, the reason why Ibrahim Abu al-Aql stopped, in fact, he was beaten by Sabah actually was in Baghdad University, and he spoke to one of his friends from the Ba'ath, and they checked Ibrahim al-Khalil, Ibrahim Abu al-Aql, and eventually they actually stopped him from harassing you. That's how it stopped the process.
It's true. It stopped afterwards.
Thank you. I'm going to let Yvette talk now, and then we can take a question and answer. Where's Yvette?
I'm right here.
Okay, wonderful. Hi, Yvette. Welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning to all of you joining us today on this continent, and good evening to all our friends in Israel and Europe. Yes, we are scattered all over the world. Thank you to the Spanish and Portuguese Synagogue of Montreal for organizing this very important commemoration and inviting me to participate. When I think about this dark chapter of our lives, I still feel the fear, the disbelief, the despair, and mostly the rage that such atrocities happened in a civilized world. I have been asked to talk to you about our life in Iraq. I can talk for hours about hundreds of our community members that were imprisoned and tortured. Some were hanged, and some simply disappeared. But I will restrict my talk today to two cases that touched me personally. My cousin Jacob Atrakci, Zachronal Bracha, and my husband, Joe. My cousin, Jacob Atrakchi, Kabi to his family and friends, was a proud Iraqi citizen and served in the Iraqi army. A prominent textile merchant, a loving husband and father of 6 boys and a 4-year-old little girl who adored him. The only strike against him was that he had the wrong faith. He was Jewish. The government alleged that they discovered an espionage network in Basra. Jacob was arrested on November 8, 1968, along with other prominent businessmen and 4 teenage boys. Jacob, along with the others, was transferred to Qasr al-Nihaya in Baghdad, an interrogation and torture center from which rarely anyone got out alive. On that same day, Jacob was cruelly tortured to death and badly disfigured. They wanted him to sign a confession that he was a spy. He would not do that. He kept telling them he was innocent. They killed him in front of the other Jewish detainees as an example. That way, they got the others to sign fake confessions. Jacob was 44 years old. The authorities claimed that Jacob ran away. We knew in our hearts that no one runs away. His wife, Tina, who is also my cousin, left her children behind with their grandparents in Basra and came to Baghdad to look for her husband. She spent months running from department to department to no avail. We didn't know if he was dead or alive. We only found out that Jacob was killed when a fellow prisoner, Haskell Sion Zilcha, was released from prison after the hangings and told Tina that he witnessed Jacob's murder. A few years ago, I came across an article that said that Jacob was run over by a truck in front of his fellow detainees. I'm sorry, it's just very hard to tell the story. Jacob's family suffered another tragic loss in 1985. Jacob's son Albert, who was an Israeli diplomat in Egypt, was ambushed and killed while driving with his family in Cairo on August 22, 1985. He was 29. His wife was injured, and fortunately, his 2-year-old baby was not hurt. My husband, Joseph Dabi, had his share of problems with the Iraqi authorities. He was arrested on June 10, 1967, at the end of the 6-day war. He was taken to Muaskar al-Rashid, a military base just south of Baghdad, where he and 3 other Jewish Al-Hikmah students spent 2 weeks of interrogations. The authorities wanted them to testify that the Jesuit fathers were American spies, and when they refused, they were tortured and accused of being Zionist spies. They were eventually released after bribes were paid by their families. In July 1968, my husband was arrested again by the Mukhabarat and accused of taking photos of military installations. He was transferred to the central prison, where around 50 Jewish men, doctors, lawyers, and businessmen were being held. At that time, there was a law that Jews and Ba'athists could be imprisoned without cause and for an indefinite time. On July 17, 1968, the Ba'athists staged a coup d'etat and took power. The first thing they did was to abolish this law to free the Ba'athists in Iraq prisons. Joe was released because his papers were not finalized. The rest of the Jewish detainees were kept in jail and released after the international outrage following the January executions. For the 3rd time, Joe was arrested in July of 1969. He was taken to the Ministry of Defense. The military wanted him to testify against the officer who was collecting bribes from Jewish prisoners in 1967. Joe, fearing for his life, denied that bribes were paid in exchange for his release. Eventually, Joe was released after the officer died from torture. My husband, Joseph Dabi, was one of the lucky ones, the few that survived these arrests. We must keep telling our story. At the same time, we have to remember who we are, where we came from, and the glorious contributions of the Babylonian Jews over the centuries. We must continue to perpetuate our unique heritage. They tried to destroy us, but we survived. We picked up the pieces and moved on with strength, resilience, and a deep appreciation of the simple blessings we have in our lives. I cannot help thinking that Hashem, in his infinite wisdom, chose to take us out of Iraq at the right time. Thank you.
Wow, thank you so much. They're so powerful, all these testimonies. I thank you all, and I welcome questions if anybody would ask anybody questions.
So
Yes, Danny. Sorry, David. Did you want to say something? David, you first.
I know, just to say it's almost it's 12:50, and I don't know how long people would like to go. So anyway, let's start with questions and answers and see how that goes. I think we should stop at some point, maybe in another 10-15 minutes, unless the majority would like to continue. So let's start with questions and answers. Thank you.
Danny.
Yeah, quick question, guys. Thank you so much for sharing this. It's so moving, but it's our heritage, and I didn't realize that you went through all that. But my question to you is that, do you feel that Israel could have helped you more? Like, was that a feeling among your community at the time, that maybe the Mossad or something should have been done for you? And what is your feeling about that? Did you expect more from Israel to help you out in that time?
No, we didn't. We didn't at all. In fact, we were very surprised when at one point at least for myself, others can answer too. At one point we were hearing Israel radio and they were at the wall crying. And we were very touched by their reaction. We were very, very touched by the fact that they insisted that nobody was a spy. We were very touched by it all, but we didn't know. I mean, I used to have dreams of having an invisible helicopter from Israel coming to pick us up from the garden. That's my point of view. Anybody else from Iraq thought that Israel didn't do enough? David, Yvette, anybody else?
Actually, I think thanks to Israel, we were able to get out. I think Israel intervened with the Kurds and bribed whoever it's going to be. Because I was listening to I started to listen to some series from, they call it Tilk al-Ayam, from people who were in the security apparatus of Iraq. And they're telling the stories. I've been listening for hours and hours of that. And one of them, they think, is Azat Duri, who was the redhead. He got bribes from either Israel through so another party, and then he convinced Saddam Hussein to let the Jews out to go out. Like to so they can leave, and the Ba'ath Party will take their money, and that was something that I heard myself in these radio, call it on YouTube.
Yes.
I think we have to separate the issue of relying or hoping that help would be from Israel. When we were faced with these mockery trials and the accusation of Jews being spies, I think, anyway, for me, I didn't want to have any association with Israel. We were a little bit worried that if Israel speaks on our behalf or anything, that we're really now spies. What came after the hangings, like in the end of 69, 70, 71, the escape to Iran, that was initiated by Israel, and with Israel's help with the Kurds, we managed to get out. So I think, correct me if I'm wrong, if I'm the only one that had the feeling at the time of the hanging and after the 6-day war, we didn't really want association open with Israel because we were fearing for our lives.
Lizette, can I say something?
I agree. Any actions from Israel at the time would have brought repercussions from the Iraqis, and it would have served no purpose whatsoever. What Israel did, it organized demonstrations outside in the Western world, in Europe, which scared the Iraqis from doing any more actions.
Can I add something?
Please, Lily. I'd like Lily to talk. She's from the Babylonian the museum in Israel, and she is an amazing historian also, and very dedicated to the museum. Thank you, Lily. Go ahead.
So, of course, years later, we know about from Shlomo Hillel, from the people of the Mossad, the agents of the Mossad, Yitzhak Barzilai, and others, and Tzvi Gabay, who was an ambassador, who was in the foreign ministry, in the foreign office. Of course, behind the scenes, Israel made a lot of efforts, a lot of activity. Of course, it was not supposed to be public because of the fear for the people, or I mean, for the Jews, not to be identified with, not to be associated with Israel or something with Israel, but there were a lot of diplomatic and not only diplomatic, of course, the arrangement, the organization of the escape, and before that there were many activities from the of the Mossad regarding the Jews of Iraq at that time, after the 6 Days War, after the hangings. And the Knesset held a special meeting or something like that to commemorate the 9 who were hanged. And there were a lot of activities, and this was told by people who were who spoke in our in the Babylonian Jewry Heritage Center in events that we held in the last 2 years.
Thank you, Lily. I'd like to emphasize that there were not 9, there were 10, because of Jamal Hakim, whose father was Jewish. Unfortunately, I couldn't get a picture of his, but apparently he was a very good-looking boy, and he was also, unfortunately, being raped by all the prison guards. I'm sorry to say. So we cannot forget this young martyr. Gladys,
Lizette, Lizette, I do have a quick question, if you don't mind, if there's time. I thank all of you, of course. You did awesome job, for the speakers, for the planners, for the rabbi. First, if somebody can send by email Mr. Shimon Samuels from the Holocaust, Witzental Holocaust. What I have in mind, obviously, our community, Iraqi communities everywhere are doing their best to keep these histories going, prayers. On a day like this, do you think we can ask other synagogues or Jewish organizations, let's say in Canada, as we are in Canada, to do the same, at least prayers, at least a mention of that part of history? I think if Mr. Samuels is here, or other presidents of the Jewish community, the Iraqi Jewish community, might have some idea. If you don't have any idea, then that's fine too. I just wanted to ask a bit of a question. Thank you.
Can I make an observation? Lizette, can I make an observation?
Yes,
because,
go ahead.
27th of January that year, okay, it was a terrible thing that happened, all the more so since 27th of January, I think 1945, was when the Auschwitz was liberated, you know, and so that the 27th of January, which will be this Wednesday, is actually an International Holocaust Memorial Day. So, I mean, it's a doubly, you know, traumatizing to think that on the day that, you know, in World War II, Auschwitz was liberated, that these people and people before them, right? I mean, they were killed in such a gruesome way.
Yeah, thank you, Sandra. That's what Shimon mentioned as well, Mr. Shimon Samuel mentioned
good.
exactly that.
Thank you.
Thank you for reminding us. Gladys wants to say something.
Hi, everybody. This is a very nice opportunity to remember the people that lost their lives in Baghdad, and everybody spoke very, very well. Thank you very much. I would like to add one thing that came to mind, and that we used to listen to the radio Sawt al-Rafidin, the voice of the Rafidin, and that was
Ibn Rafidin.
Ibn Rafidin, right. So that was broadcast out of Israel, and that was Israel's way of keeping our spirits up and keeping our hopes that help is on the way, and that we'll be able to leave and go to Israel,
that's
and go to the free world.
Exactly.
Can anybody comment on that?
I want to just
yeah,
say,
can I comment on that? I'm in touch with the daughter of Salman Dabbi ibn Rafidin, and there is a huge archives of all the stories that is being mentioned during those over 15 years that we heard, and I'm hoping to collect them, and we also republish some of these stories or retell them by voice.
That would be amazing, Khadr, amazing.
Absolutely amazing, wonderful.
The second thing, it's very, very important to emphasize that while we are, of course, shocked by the hanging on the 27th, it's very, very important that we mention that there are another almost 45 people who were killed and kidnapped, and rarely their names, I mean, they're rarely mentioned by names. So I think maybe in the future we should dedicate a few additional time to mention the names of those people who, many people do not know about them. The third thing that I would like to say, as many of you know, that I am collecting all sorts of stories about the escape. But what I heard today from David, from Yvette, from the others about other stories connected with this period, it's very, very important to record them, to write them. So please send me as much as you can. If you cannot write them, just dictate them and send it to me as a voice message. It's very, very important. We are the last generation who can tell the story as eyewitnesses. Maybe one day Gladys suggested we do the documentary. I don't know, but without really having first, eyewitness account, people will just, it never happened. And this is a reminder for us, for our children, for our grandchildren, and for the Iraqis who don't know also, even if you don't care about them, but there are many people are trying to write the history, and we are the one who can tell that history.
Can I add something, Lizette? Two things. First of all, David Khadr, you are a part of our team to try and create an exhibition of this community, the community who escaped in the 70s and the final Jews. The second thing I wanted to say that in the Babylonian Jewry Heritage Center, we held events, and it was not only with the families of the 9 who were executed, but also with others, with the families of other people who were murdered in prison. And there are a lot of eyewitness evidence in our YouTube channel that you can watch. It is in Hebrew. It is not translated. If somebody can help with translation, this will be great. And the exhibition in the museum is very, very important. but it is stuck because of the COVID crisis and other reasons.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Just one word, Lizette. I am also going through the register of Frank Aney, which is the best register of names, and I'm rebuilding it completely digitally in Excel file. This way we can reestablish basically who are the people who are in Iraq, because until now we do not really know whether we were 3,000 or 3,500 or 2,000, and how many people actually escaped. And maybe once we have this, we can get a real number, you know.
What happened to the others?
Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah, okay. Joe Samuel, I'm sorry. Thank you, Khadr. Joe?
Lizette, okay.
Thank you, Lizette. I think it's so important to remember history, because without history, we have no present and future. I'm lucky that I left Iraq in 1950. I was born in Tahrir in 1930, and I was 19 years old when I left. Perhaps I'm the oldest person in this group here. I just celebrated my 90th birthday on December 31st, and Yvette participated.
Mazzal tov.
Thank you. Thank you. My comment is we had other hanging in Baghdad when I was there back in 1948 of Shafiq Addis. You know, perhaps I'm the last person that an eyewitness to the Farhud of 1941. I was 10 years old, and also my plan to go to study was diffused visa. And but let's remember also the other, you know, the people that was killed in the Farhud, and also the hanging of the public hanging of Shafiq Addis. When I saw him, I was crying like most of the Jews then, and I was fortunate that I escaped in 1949. And in fact, as requested, I have written my book. You know, where can you see it?
No.
Just
Oh, wait.
And the museum has a copy of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Babylonian Museum has a copy of it.
Yes, we have it in the library.
In the library, and I'm in the process now to translate it into Arabic. And somebody helping me from Iraq, you know, is doing the translation with me in Arabic.
Unbelievable.
And then probably I'll do that in Hebrew also. You know, I, again, like all of you, have the good memories of being growing up in Iraq and the lovely Samak Mazgoof and all the work, but the fear that and the life that I have, I'm so happy that I left, and I will never go back again. And I thank you all for the commemoration of what you did, every one of you. Thank you so much.
Lizette, I would like to say something.
Yes, yes.
Hi, Han, how are you?
Fine, thanks.
Hi. Doris.
Doris,
Hi.
yes.
I just wanted to say we are talking about the hanging, but from 1967 to 1970, there were a lot of heart attack deaths. So our community, beside imprisonment, beside the hanging, a lot of people passed away from heart attacks.
Yes,
so for those who were not with us, and also as somebody who studied in Frank Aney School, I mean, we were educated. We studied French, English, but here you see the world landing on the moon at 1969, and we were sitting ducks in Baghdad. We were terrified from fear. I just wanted to add.
That's true. That also is fun.
Can I add some information?
Sorry. Yes, Emil, sorry. There are a few people with their hands raised. We're going to go over them first, and thank you. And it's up to you, David. Okay. Yes, Emil.
Right. Just some information perhaps that was never mentioned. My uncle was in Basra, and he used to have regularly one night a week where his friends would meet and play poker, right? One of whom was Naji Zilkha, and few more. He was approached in August that year and was asked whether he would pay something to a journalist. He was trying to blackmail him, the journalist trying to blackmail him. That if you don't give me money, I'm going to publish an article against you. They told him to go away, you know. They all decided that he wasn't worthwhile. He was a little journalist of no consequence. Well, believe it or not, that article was written. And I remember it very well because he says, I will not rest until I see these people, this cell of Zionists, every one of them hung in the middle of Tahrir of Liberation Square.
Awful.
So he started that.
Sandra, please.
But what I think did happen is this. You know, we're talking about July the 17th, there was that revolution, call it what you like, by the Ba'athists. Now, they had it planned beforehand. The reason why I say they had it planned, because in August, they started talking about, I mean, they only started in July. And on the 8th of August, they started talking about spy cells, right?
Sandra,
the idea behind it, of course, is that, look, we must show that we are the rulers here. People must fear us. And we must do something so that people would fear us and obey us. One of the way of doing it, get us the Jews. That's a perfect example because such a popular thing. Take the Jews first. And they did that with the Jews. All right, they mixed few people, few other people, one or two Christians, few Muslims, you know, because 14 were hanged really. So there were few more than the Jews. And this put in the hearts of the people the fear. These people are like that. So I just want to...
Thank you, Emil. We're running out of time. I'm sorry. Jaka Trakchi. Jaka Trakchi, unmute yourself. And Sandra Chitayat, please mute yourself.
Yes, dear.
Okay, Jack. Jack, we can't hear you.
Lizette, can I say a word?
Yeah, sure. Freddie Ezekiel, he is not Joe. He is another contemporary of yours. He's also 90 years old. Mazal tov again. Okay,
Yeah.
Freddie.
Yeah, Joe, I'm sorry to tell you, I'm older than you are. I am 91. I was born 29.
Oh,
But I have a question. I was lucky to leave in 1948. I went to Baghdad College, Kulliyat Baghdad, with the Jesuits. But the question I want to ask is, my uncle was Hacham Sesol Khoury, and his son was Shaul Khoury, who was in prison for a year. Does anybody in this group know what happened to Hacham and his family, and after I left, or what happened? Does anybody know?
tell you, Joyce.
Freddie,
Yeah.
I'm your second cousin. I'm Suzanne Twig's son, Jamil.
Oh, you are?
I bloody well am. Hacham Sasson passed away in 1971, and he had a very great send-off. There were representatives from the presidential palace, from the Ministry of Culture, and so on. Shaul passed away here. They managed in London. They managed to come here with his family. His younger son still lives in London, but unfortunately his elder son passed away 4 or 5 years ago, cancer in Israel.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Freddie, you should meet Joyce Sasson, who is here. She was married to Zuhair, the grandson
Oh,
of...
I know Joyce. I met
Yeah.
her a few times. Yeah.
Well, here she is.
Yes, Freddie, you remember you and Shaul, you were at our house in Ramat Gan.
Yes, I remember.
Yes, you see, and then we were in a very good relation with May, Zichrona Livracha, and Fred. They used to come every year and then. And I met also Farah in Canada.
Montreal, Canada. Yeah.
Yes.
So nice to see you.
Yes, really. I mean, I'm so happy to see you. Maybe we will join somehow, somewhere. I don't know. We can see.
You are the closest relative of mine now, because even my cousin, what's his name? Salman passed away a long time ago.
I know.
And Meir and Zuhair and
Yes,
oh
yes.
my God, what a memory! I
Yes.
hope to meet you someday.
Yes, I hope so. We are
Keep
the
in
soul.
touch. Bye.
Fred, where are you located? Where are you?
I'm in Massachusetts, Boston, near Lexington, Massachusetts.
Oh, let's get together. You know, the older people that face all the similar situation. I'm in Los Angeles. So we are neighbors.
You're neighbors.
Thank you all of Sasson family. Please stick to this subject. And Odette Matzliach, she suggested to cooperate with the Shimon Wiesenthal organization to do something about the collective memory. Our victims are not included in the collective memories, neither in Israel nor in maybe in Wiesenthal organization. So we need to do something about this, just
right.
like Odette suggested.
I'll speak to Shimon Samuels. We must be distant cousin with the same name.
Thank you, everyone. I wanted to know one last thing. If Samira, are you still with us? Samira Elias? It was your video that we showed of your brother, your late brother, Hesco. You want to say anything, Samira?
No, I'm fine. Thank you, darling. I can't speaking.
Okay,
I am so sorry. Thank you for everything.
Okay, honey. God bless you, and
You too.
may you
Thank
only
you.
see happy times.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody. David, anything
You
you wanna
thank you.
add?
Thank you to everyone. Thank you.
God bless you, Samira.
Lizette,
Sorry, yes, Joyce.
I want to get connected with
Freddie.
Freddie. Yes.
I'll send him to you. I'll send you Freddie. I'll send you to each other. Freddie, you got a new girlfriend here.
I think there's one last person that would like to ask a question, I believe.
Sure.
I want to ask Lily Shore, what was the name of the YouTube you said was that I'd like to be able to translate it. Maybe I can translate it.
It's the Babylonian Jewry Heritage Center. We have a website, and you can go to YouTube and see all the interviews. There is an event in which Samira took part, and she talked in Arabic, not in Hebrew. So you can, and those of you that understand Arabic, you can listen to it. And there are a lot of interviews, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Very much.
David, thank you. You've done a
Yeah,
wonderful
question.
job.
Evelyn has a
Evelyn
question.
Shaheen, Holy.
Can I ask you to do that at least once a year for the new generation, not to forget all the history of the Iraqi Jews?
Yeah,
Even
Evelyn, absolutely. Absolutely, Evelyn. We've been doing it every year in the synagogue, but this is one of the benefits of COVID. We ended up instead of being the number of people that we are on Shabbat in the synagogue,
exactly,
ended up being 183 people participating in this event. So definitely, even without COVID, we'll make sure to do a Zoom type event in the future.
Keep doing that for the next generations with an S. Amen.
Yes,
Lizette, can I say a word?
please, Sammy, you're our
Okay.
our scholar.
I want to add just a few things that probably you never heard it before. I was in Baghdad in 1948-49 when the hanging took over. And I was in the bus going to Shamash school when I saw the hanging of the Jews. They didn't cover their face. They just put a big sign on their body, the Jews that are traitors. Anyhow, we lived in 1949, 50. It's the same as you lived in 1967, 68, and 69. No country ever opened their mouth and said anything, despite the fact that the hanging was not far from the British High Commissioner house. One day I was listening to the BBC in Arabic late at night, and here what I heard. They said, we are copying this information from an Italian radio whose reporter was in Baghdad, and he had to go from Baghdad to Cyprus to file this report. And this is the news. They are hanging the Jews, torturing the Jews, putting them in a prison. They treated them very, very badly. Now, despite that, nothing else is mentioned. But what happened, we heard that the only country that wanted to open its doors to the Jews of Baghdad was Spain under General Franco. He said those Jews of Baghdad, they're originally Sephardi, and there many of them came from Spain. This is what he claimed. He said he's ready to give us citizenship if we want to come to Spain. Wow. And I heard nothing about that later on. It was just maybe a word, but it was in the news. So this is just for your information.
Very interesting. Thank you.
So last word. It's very, very important to mention also, since we mentioned those tragedies, the tragedy of the Qashqoush family, that were 5 of them were massacred in their home.
The Qashqoush family was murdered execution style in 1972.
1973, April 1973.
April 1973, and I think in 72 they kidnapped Samira's sister, who was married to Qashqoush also, the brother of this.
Yeah, it's a different Qashqoush, not.
Yes.
No,
she said they were brothers.
It is the same.
Yeah, it's the same. Yeah. They were brothers.
No, not different. It's the same family.
Same
but
family,
it
not
is
the same.
Different incidents.
Yeah, it's
different incidents.
Yeah.
This is Samira telling us about her sister.
Yeah.
Again, so first of all, I'd like to thank everyone for participating. As I mentioned, we had at our height, we had 183 participants. I'd like to thank Lizette for all your hard work in organizing the speakers, sharing pictures from your yearbooks. I'd like to thank Charles, our president of the synagogue, for your kind words, for the rabbi, for the cantor, for Shimon Samuels. It was an honor to have you participate with us. To all the speakers, Norma and Yvette and David, all I can say is, listen, I was born in Montreal, so I never experienced any of this. And frankly speaking, to me, this was extremely enlightening. It actually made me feel very sad to think what everybody went through, and the anxiety that you lived through must have just been terrible, and all your experiences. And what I can say is, this makes me, and this was brought up a bit earlier by a few speakers, but I think, the strength of democracy is so important, and it's something we have to protect and cherish. And because that is how we will, that is why Israel is as great as it is. And that is why the countries many of us live in are as great as they are. And so we need to continue to protect our democracies. And I want to thank everybody again. And inshallah, we'll do this again next year. Again, have a wonderful rest of your day or your rest of your evening. And Lizette, last word to you.
Yeah, David, we must thank Gladys, Daoud, and Monas for introducing, for bringing in Shimon Samuels. It was Gladys's brainwave, along with her friend Evelyn Monas in Paris, and Shimon is in Israel. So that was an international.
Thank you, Gladys.
Yeah, thank you, Gladys.
You're welcome.
Thank you, everybody.